Hey there, Sarah here, and welcome to my first episode of Killer Decrypting. If you would like to hang out with me or Virgil, there's a Discord link down below. Every week we do a fan meetup in-game or just in voice chat. So come meet the team and make some friends. Anyways, on to the video. Legion is by far my favorite killer aesthetically. Legion can be anyone, your friends, your neighbor, or even your own blood. But to simplify the idea of this ruthless but amateur murder, they go by a few names: Frank, Julie, Susie, and Joey. Frank Morrison was 19 and had little to show for it. He'd stopped attending school after being kicked out of the basketball team for shoving a referee into the stands. Yet, Frank was a man of potential who could light up a room despite his bleak childhood. At 6 years old, he'd been taken away from Coolgary to start a circuit of foster homes. No matter how many times he'd lash out, threw tantrums, or got into fights, they'd kept moving him to new, unfamiliar houses. His last move had been 3 years prior when his last foster dad, Clive Andrews, had picked him up from the adoption center. They'd been on the road for 7 hours before reaching a small bungalow in Ormond. It would be the longest time they'd spend together, where gray winters dragged on for most of the year. Frank did everything he could to get into another adoptive family, but he changed his mind when he caught the attention of Julie, a beautiful girl who was convinced that she deserved better than the life in Ormond, and Frank, as an outsider, was her ticket out. Frank attended the party she threw, where everyone was younger than him and easily impressed, which he liked. There, he met the impulsive Joey, who liked to show off, and the shy, naive Susie, who was Julie's best friend. They would hang out in an abandoned lodge up Mount Ormond. Their time together was the perfect break from the boring conformity of their small, insignificant, everyday lives. Frank saw it as an opportunity to shape their lack of experience into something powerful. He lined up nights of debauchery and rampage, testing their limits. Bullying, vandalism, and theft were essentially their weekend plans. It came to the point where they would do anything he asked. Nothing was off limits when they put their masks on. And one evening, Frank dared Joey to vandalize the store that had recently fired him. They snuck inside easily enough, as the building was supposed to be empty after closing hours. But a cleaner who was still there grabbed Julie as soon as she came near. Hearing her stifled cries, a dark impulse took over Frank. He rushed to her aid, knife in hand, and without hesitating, planted the blade into the cleaner's back. As the group stared at Frank in shock, he ordered them to finish the job. Joey clenched his jaw, grabbed the knife, and stabbed the bleeding man in the ribs. Susie didn't want to do it. Frank shouted at her. They had to finish what they had started. Julie closed her eyes and slid the knife into the man's chest. She handed the wet blade to Susie. They were all in this now. Susie stared at Julie in disbelief as Frank grabbed her trembling hand and inserted the knife deep into the man's throat. Frank told them to move fast. They mopped the blood off the floor, stashed the body in the trunk of Joey's car, and drove to Mount Ormond. All four were digging into the muddy snow to dispose of the body when Frank spotted something moving through the woods. He grabbed his knife and broke from the group to check it out. The fog thickened around Frank, becoming so dense that he could no longer see ahead. He retraced his steps and stumbled onto an ominous trail. He followed the eerie path, as if called by the darkness. Julie, Susie, and Joey finished digging, but Frank was nowhere to be seen. Julie spotted his muddy footprints in the snow, and 3 of them followed the trail, which took them deeper into the woods. When Julie, Susie, and Joey did not return home that night, their parents thought they'd run away with Frank. Each family came up with a different theory. The mood in the town changed, however. when a body was found by an abandoned lodge up Mount Ormond. Legion's main power is Feral Frenzy. The Frenzy power gauge builds up over time. While active, the power gauge drains rapidly, and the power ends when the gauge is empty, triggering an extended recovery cooldown. When activating Feral Frenzy, the Legion enters a deadly rage. While the power is active, the Legion sprints faster than base movement speed, can vault pallets, but cannot break them. Survivors' scratch marks are hidden from Legion's view, and missed attacks have a reduced cooldown. Additionally, while Feral Frenzy is active, hitting a survivor who's not currently afflicted with the Deep Wound status effect applies the Deep Wound status effect, injures the survivor if they are not already injured, refills the Legion's entire power gauge bar, triggers Killer Instinct, revealing the location of all other survivors who do not have the Deep Wound status effect applied and are within the Killer's terror radius. In hitting a survivor with the Killer's power while your target is currently afflicted with the Deep Wound status effect reduces a portion of the survivor's Deep Wound bleed-out timer and depletes the Legion's entire gauge and ends the power immediately. For Legion's perks, you have Discordance. Anytime 2 or more survivors are working on the same generator, that generator's aura is highlighted in yellow for 8 to 12 seconds. Mad Grit. While carrying a survivor, you suffer no cooldown on missed attacks, and successfully hitting another survivor will pause the carried survivor's wiggle timer for 2 to 4 seconds. And Iron Maiden. You open lockers 30 to 50% faster, and any survivors who exit lockers suffer from the exposed status effect for 15 seconds, and their location is revealed for 3 seconds. The best add-on combo, in my opinion, you can use is Stab Wound Steady, which considerably decreases the Deep Wound timer of all survivors, and Frank's Mixtape, which considerably increases the amount of damage applied to the survivor's Deep Wound timer while attacking with Feral Frenzy. Both add-ons let you decrease the long timer of Deep Wounds, letting you quickly take down survivors so that you can go and chase others down to add to your body pile. Other more notable add-ons include the Iridescent Button. When a Deep Wound status effect has been applied during Feral Frenzy, your terror radius affects the entire map, and any pallets you vault over are immediately broken. And Fuming Mixtape. While using Feral Frenzy, the repair progress of generators can be determined by the intensity of their auras. Legion, in my own opinion, is a killer that breaks the game in a really bad way. I love the idea of a killer who could be anyone you know, but this killer is boring to play and probably even more annoying to fight. The power itself is a neat enough idea, but executed horribly. The Legion is the only killer who has the ability to vault pallets, but the way Legion is supposed to be played is by stabbing a survivor, looking around, then chasing another survivor and repeating the process. However, this won't work because when a survivor is affected by the Deep Wound status, they can just heal right back out of it with 0 negative effects, ultimately slowing down the game by a few seconds, which just isn't worth it in my opinion. But the way most Legions play is a little bit different and slightly more effective, but ultimately it breaks the game and makes it unfun for both sides. What you do is stab the survivor, but instead of looking for another person, just stab them again. Now, all you have to do is look away from them while running at them backwards. This ensures that the survivor's Deep Wound gauge trickles down, but they can't stop or heal it because they're still being chased by you. When the bar gets low enough, just turn back around and activate Feral Frenzy again, and there you go, you have one easy free down. Do you see why most people do this? Where most killers struggle to chase down a survivor, the Legion just doesn't care. The fact that you know that no matter what you do, you will always win that chase is boring, and there's 0 fun for, again, both parties. And you might be thinking, well, why not just play the killer how the devs want you to play it? Well, let me tell you, that's the shittiest idea I have ever heard. The killer themselves have 0 map pressure, and relies on a gimmick that ultimately knocks off only a few seconds of precious time in a game, there is a 0% chance that a survivor will be dumb enough to let it go down to 0%. So you become a killer that has to rely on your basic hits, except with a power that lets your prey get away from you. You got yourself some spicy meatballs there, devs. Anyways, I'm done ranting. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Killer Decrypting. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and let me know in the comments on which killer you want me to make a video on next, or even tell me why you hate or love this killer. If you feel like supporting the channel, hit the subscribe button and ding the bell icon for notifications when we post. I hope you all have a wonderful day. This has been your favorite murdering rabbit, Sarah, and peace out.